There hasn't really been a lot of like, big or good updates that are fully founded in reality. A lot of rumors, a lot of information. But first, I've been hearing somewhere that apparently there's misinformation about the body being dismembered. So there's been arguments recently on certain parts of this story, on certain parts online, where people have been like, no, the girl wasn't actually dismembered. That was just, misinformation that was being spread because one news article published it incorrectly. Other people probably are arguing that it was just decomposed, but still within the trunk of the car. And the reason why this is relevant is because a lot of people are applying like incredibly malicious behavior to David. Now that David has been named as not a suspect, they're wondering, so what about like this dismemberment? Essentially, there's a lot of misinformation that is making this story like really, really blurry to follow. I'm not inclined to believe immediately that David absolutely definitively murdered this girl. It's entirely possible, but I'm just not sure if that's the case. It could have been anybody. But let's try to get some information properly compiled here and see if we can actually hit on some legitimate info. It remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of Celeste Rivas Hernandez remains. 15-year-old girl may have been dead for several weeks by the time her remains were discovered in the trunk of a singer-songwriter David's impound Tesla in Los Angeles, police said Monday. It doesn't say dismembered remains here, but it does say remains. Still not clear how Celeste Rivas Hernandez died. Police acknowledge that there is likely some criminal culpability for the concealment of her body. So, essentially, it's entirely possible that she may have died through natural means, or maybe not natural means, but like her own, mistakes. Maybe she committed suicide. Maybe she, took pills, and somebody wasn't wanted to conceal the body to not report it to police because it would have been incredibly weird for a 15-year-old, 14-year-old's body to be found in somebody's mansion somewhere, right? So it was just hidden and then the car was abandoned. Celeste's body was found in the trunk area of Tesla's belonging to David Burke. On September 8th, police said, using David's real name. Okay. The vehicle had been parked at the location from which it was towed for several weeks, so Ms. Rivas Hernandez may have been deceased for several weeks before the discovery of her body. Several weeks. So, just to make sure we keep track of the timeline, because her body was discovered around September 6th, December 8th, between that area. Her body would have just been discovered around her birthday. Officers discovered Celeste's body after police were called to Hollywood's tow because of a foul odor coming from the Tesla. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not yet determined the cause or manner of Ms. Rivas Hernandez's death, police said Monday. As such, it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the concealment of her body. 71-pound girl? 71 pounds? 71 pounds? How do you fucking get that light? Unless, decomposition, seriously removed a lot of, weight from her. How do you... or is this, an estimated of what she would have been, 71 pound... Dude. The 71-pound girl, I don't think is accurate, unless, they're talking about the weight of their body, the dead, deceased body. So, was the David body dismembered? Is what I want to correct, because I'm pretty sure that might have been misinformation. The remains were found on September 8th, 2025, inside a plastic bag in the front trunk of a Tesla. The vehicle had been towed in a lot to Hollywood after being abandoned Hollywood Hills. So strong would come in the car. Condition of the body. The body was described as dismembered and severely decomposed, and authorities believe it had been in the vehicle for several weeks. Severely decomposed. That might be true, but is it dismembered? So this is an NBC. This is another article by NBC News, even further back, September 17th. I want to see if it was, if there's any corrections here. We think that she was dead ass tortured and starved. They mean her weight when she was still alive. Okay, but yeah, the torture stuff. Okay. That's just a game theory, though. All right. Yeah, I'm not inclined to believe. I'm not inclined to believe that she was, tortured and starved or anything like that. It's entirely possible that she might have been addicted to cocaine and she eventually overdosed, which is incredibly common for, people that get into, these environments, especially young individuals. Funnily enough, The Weeknd has made an incredibly good commentary on, Hollywood life. In his songs, he's talked about how, girls are always fucking doing cocaine when they're involved with, popular stars or, singers, rappers, producers, whatever. So it's possible that rather than being tortured and starved, because a lot of people are making extreme theories to describe what's going on here, I'm more inclined to believe that she might have just had a cocaine addiction, right? I'm more inclined to believe that she might have just had, she might have just been on coke. Law enforcement said that the girl, Celeste Rivas, was identified through forensics, that her death is being investigated as homicide. The decomposed body found last week in singer David's Tesla at Los Angeles impound lot was identified as that of a 15-year-old girl. The girl, Celeste Rivas, was identified through forensics. At this time, the LAPD does not have a crime classification from the coroner as to the mode or manner of death. Thus, we do not have any suspect information at the time. If it were like multiple weeks decomposed, would there be like, if she overdosed, would there be any trace? Probably. I don't think the decomposition would have like, gotten rid of drug traces. The Riverside County Sheriff's Office said in a statement Tuesday that it has confirmed with the Los Angeles Police Department that Celeste Rivas Fernandez has been identified as a juvenile who was reported missing from Lake Elsinore. In a follow-up statement, the Sheriff's Office later clarified that the Los Angeles Police Department is the lead agency in the case and the main point of contact. It also apologized for initially calling the investigation a homicide. So, as it turns out, investigators don't legitimately know if this was a homicide, right? Or if this was like an accidental death, like an accidental suicide from like, what could be various other causes. If she was 71 pounds while she was alive, which seems to be the case given the fact that like she does look pretty thin and she is relatively small. She might be like, 4'10", 4'11". 71 pounds is possible, but god fucking damn. The remains were found September 8th after Los Angeles police were called to, like literally a day after her birthday, or what would have been her birthday, which is incredibly sad. The vehicle was impounded after a person reported that it had been abandoned. The medical examiner's office said the girl was wearing a tube top, black leggings, a yellow metal chain bracelet, and stud earrings. She was described as having wavy black hair and weighing about 71 pounds. About 71 pounds at the time she was alive. Law enforcement source told that NBC News that remains were not intact. The medical examiner said it appeared the girl had been dead in the car for an extended period of time. It's entirely possible that the body fell apart because of severe decomposition, rather than somebody like, taking an axe or taking a knife or taking like, another utensil to cut the body apart. So, in terms of dismemberment, who knows? Who knows? It seems like a little bit of that this information here isn't exactly the clearest. Was she dismembered by somebody to like conceal this body after the fact? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if this was a murder anymore. And I think it's incredibly important to say that as more details come out, because a lot of people are jumping to the assumption that it was somebody, either him or somebody in his entourage or somebody around him, that may have murdered this girl and planted her to either frame him or he did it himself. That might not be the case. Why hasn't David been charged? Updated on October 2nd, 2025. 3 days ago, several weeks after this body is discovered, there's still no legitimate cause of death that has been identified. We don't know if it's a murder. We don't know if it was a suicide or something similar. Without a confirmed manner of death, police are unable to make arrests, attorneys say, which is why David, again, has not been arrested. A lot of people have been wanting this guy to be arrested. That's not how due process works. That's not how the law works. This guy is not going to be arrested if these people have not meaningfully identified any suspects, which, explains why he's not in custody right now and why he has been cooperating. And given that he has been cooperating for 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, it is entirely possible that within the investigation, David has actually been ruled out as a suspect. Regardless, that doesn't change the fact that this guy was in a relationship, or, what appears to be somewhat of a romantic relationship with what would have been a 13, 14-year-old at the time. Celeste's body was likely in Brooke's Tesla weeks before she was found. Likely, but they don't have any legitimate confirmation. At the very least, I think he was involved or aware in her body's disposal. I wonder who still had access to the car besides him. Probably anybody if his Tesla key was at home, which, why wouldn't it be? Like, let's say, for example, his Tesla was parked at his manager's, house, which apparently was where he was residing. Why would he not leave the key open or, out in the open if he, took a flight and, the car came back and was parked behind somebody else's car? If that's something, or in case, the house needed to be utilized by more people, in case they needed to move the car into storage, in case they needed to move the car into the garage or something similar. Anybody could have had access to the vehicle, not exclusively him. It's entirely possible as well that she was staying at that house as well, and she was getting coked up and, at some point died from a coke overdose, and it would have been incredibly, difficult to explain that to a police officer. So whoever, stuffed the body in the trunk probably panicked. That is my theory at the very least, is if there was, a drug overdose of some sorts. If she did die from a drug overdose, not reporting it is a crime. Keep in mind, I'm not trying to defend this. It's gonna sound like I'm offering a defense. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to analyze this in the same way that other people would be arguing it within a court of law, or to explain the story. I think that, say this person did overdose, it is not an unusual response that somebody panicked would be like, I have a 15-year-old in my house that just died from a fucking cocaine overdose. What the fuck is that gonna say about me if I were to call the police? So they stuffed the body in the trunk of David's car, because presumably David and her were in a relationship, and they just said, fuck it, it's David's issue now, because of course David should have a level of responsibility for this girl if she was dating her. Think about it. What other way? What other way to what other way to rid your hands off of explaining why there was a dead 15-year-old in your house than to just say, fuck it, stuff her in the trunk and leave it in David's car while he's stirring. We know the Tesla is his, but it's not clear who was actually driving the Tesla when the body was placed in the car. Who parked it where it was eventually found and impounded? Those are the dots that still needed to be connected here. Without these answers, it will be difficult for police to file charges. Absolutely. David's connection to Celeste prior to her death. Questions have swirled about David's relationship with Rivas Hernandez, with some pointing to alleged matching tattoos, song titles, and comments with friends. I think the most damning stuff is matching tattoos and Discord comments from friends or the people around them. Friends of the singer frequently saw the pair together and believed they were romantically involved. Still not okay. To me, in my opinion, it is more likely that they were in a relationship, but who knows what the actual situation was. I think that it is fair to say that they were in a relationship of sorts. David was on tour when he was contacted by police, who told him a decomposing body was found in his car. While police haven't officially linked David to the victim, a leaked David song mentions Celeste multiple times, which I'm not sure how willing I am to take that at face value. The track, which leaked on SoundCloud in December 2023, was titled Celeste Demo Unfinished. The singer canceled the rest of the tour amid an investigation. The rest of the tour? Okay, that's new information then, that I didn't realize was true. So then we got another statement that very same day. David's manager speaks out amid Celeste Rivas Hernandez death investigation. David's manager, Josh Marshall, has spoken out about the investigation into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose body was found in the romantic homicide singer's Tesla. David's manager is addressing the controversy. Josh Marshall has spoken out amid the investigation to the deaths... say Jane Doe at this point. Into the deaths of Celeste, whose body was found in a Tesla. Don't care. This has been a tough time for my family, as I am a father of 3 children, who goes by JMogul Online. I've never received any emails, I had zero knowledge of anything, and I don't live in California. So I'm assuming that their manager is now, or his manager is now, not a lead suspect in this. Also, I work remotely 95% of the time, and my job doesn't require me to have much interaction with any of my clients or David, he continued, as there are many others that work with him on a day-to-day capacity. Not me. This news is tragic for so many and her family. I hope the proper authorities get to the bottom of it. I hope the authorities get to the bottom of it soon. I guess it's entirely possible that David and his manager had a good relationship, which is why he was allowed to remain at his manager's home without the manager being meaningfully involved. But again, it could have been anybody, or it could have been David himself that panicked and just, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If it was there for weeks and the tour started in August or in April, it literally could have been anybody and not necessarily just David. In addition to noting, a lot of this is speculation alleged, Marshall concluded, in the meantime, I am with my family helping them emotionally get through the news of this tragedy. Interesting. The music manager's comments come as more information is coming to light about the state of Rivas Hernandez's body when it was found after she was reported missing in April 2024. September 30, police shared per NBC News that the 15-year-old may have been dead for several weeks. The vehicle had been parked at the location, which it was towed for several weeks. Some mysterious bodies may have been deceased for several weeks. Okay. The investigation into the teen's death body, however, remains ongoing. There's no legitimate information. There's no legitimate information to suggest what the cause of death was, whether it was blunt force or a drug overdose. But there has been some information circulating online that apparently this girl was pregnant before her death, which I don't think is legitimately true. I think it may have just been a theory that was circulating because of too many unchecked information just being thrown around. Because there's fucking posts like these that might not be legitimately true. Forensic scientist and former CSI Amy Santoro say police think Celeste Rivas' death was caused by a drug overdose, and David will not be charged with homicide if that's the outcome. But that's just a theory. There's nothing to suggest that is a legitimate fact.
I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI, and in past videos,
which we don't know if it's true or not.
About this case, I've said that it's my opinion, based on everything, that there's 2 main ways that Celeste could have died. Number 1, strangulation. Number 2, drug overdose.
Okay, fair.
But reading between the lines of what the police have been saying, it's very clear to me that they are leaning strongly towards overdose. We've been talking about
yeah, fair.
Toxicology.
Fair. These are rational conclusions that you come if there's no evidence to suggest that this person was killed through blunt force. Yeah, just making shit up, but it is not an unnatural theory. It is not an unusual theory. This is sort of the theory that I've been coming up with myself is reading these articles that don't have any information to suggest that this is legitimately a murder. Typically, if this was a murder, and like they had the body for longer than a week under forensics, or if they had the body in the coroners doing autopsies, they would have found something already. They would have found something. They would have found some sort of wound, some sort of like, weak tissue or something. But since they haven't found anything, then that means they aren't confident that they can name this a homicide. Could have been even like perhaps a forced suicide, for lack of better words, where like she was forced to take a certain amount of drugs or something. Who knows, right? This is purely a theory. It's purely speculation.
In this case, since it
But it is not an unusual one. Since there's like no definites, and police haven't immediately ruled this as a homicide, it's possible that it might have been a suicide, or
popped off,
or an accident.
And police just came out and said once again that the medical examiner is awaiting toxicology results, which is what they would need to determine if she died from a drug overdose. Again, those typically
We're on October 5 and no information has come out in regards to a toxicology report.
take about 8 weeks, so we're still probably about a month out from getting those tox results, which would show what drugs, if any, she had in her system when she died and at what level. It's also interesting that the police have said it's unclear whether there's any criminal culpability beyond just concealment of her body, which really supports what we've already thought, that there's no overt signs of trauma. They didn't find anything criminal in the house, and the only weird thing is there's a dead girl in your car.
Yeah. She's being fair so far. I might have like written her off too soon.
When the toxicology results come back, if she had lethal amounts of any drug in her system, what's going to happen? Well, most likely is that her cause of death will be updated to toxicity of whatever substance it was that led to her death. And the manner would likely change to either accidental or remain undetermined. So if, for example, you die because you have too much Fenty in your system.
Too much Fenty. Okay, good one.
That's almost always going to be accidental because people take that drug with the intention of getting high and not usually dying. If, however, you have toxic levels of some sort of prescription sedative, for example, you might have taken them to get high, or you might have taken it to intentionally end your life. And then police don't really have a way to know which one it is. The medical examiner's not going to have a way to know which one it is. So they just have to choose randomly between accident and suicide, which they're not going to do. So the manner of death remains undetermined. Just a reminder, if you're a 20-year-old singer, R&B star, celebrity, whatever he is, and you have a contract, it's not going to look very good for you, and your record label's probably not going to like the fact that you call police, you call 911 and say, hey, there's a 13 or 14
So essentially everything that I've been saying.
year old girl ODing in my house. That's going to be a big problem. So that might be a reason that you would not call.
Yeah, okay. So literally everything that I've been saying. Literally the same exact theory. But it's just a theory. There is no legitimate, obviously anybody's theory is as good as anybody else's in a situation like this. But it's more likely that this was like an accidental death or an undetermined one, if I'm going to be fair. Even if David isn't a murderer, that doesn't absolve him of any guilt, to be clear. That doesn't absolve him of any criticism or anything that, we should be meaningfully aware of here or concerned about here. We gotta take into consideration dynamics of, if this girl had never met David, would she have ended up with, this amount of cocaine or this amount of drug in the first place? Would it have ever been supplied to her? Probably not. Would she have ever making these decisions? Would she have ever done, certain things under like this, under these peers or these dynamics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Would she have ever made any choices had it not been for meeting David in the first place, right? Has she not been enticed? Has she not, there's still very much very real concerns in regards to all of that. David may have potentially supplied her with these drugs. He may have been the reason why she did these drugs in the first place. He might have he might have been the reason why she ran away from home and started doing these drugs. He might have been the reason why she, took a significant amount of drugs in the first place. There are still things to, take into consideration here to be meaningfully aware about, meaningfully concerned about. So ultimately, while David might not be guilty of murder, there are still answers that need to be, given. There still needs to be questions that need to be answered, rather. There is no information to suggest that she did meaningfully die from a, drug overdose as a legitimate cause so far, but that seems to be the likely case, or at least the likely theory. And there is no information to suggest that she was pregnant before her death, okay? There is no information to suggest that either. So a lot of this seems to be, conspiracy theories that a lot of people have ran with to claim as fact. So I guess that's the full coverage on the David story now, and I think that I'm comfortable leaving it off as maybe he's not a murderer. It appears that this could have been an accidental death, although there are a lot of things to be concerned about in a situation like this.